In this video, we're going to explore some swing trading timing techniques useful on daily charts. There'll be a few instances where it's useful for day trading, and I'll point them out as we go along. But mainly we'll be using daily charts, timing swing trades. The techniques are called planetary stepping. There'll be several techniques, but I need to mention, regardless of how good this may look to you, simply picking the times of pivots is not enough. You need to combine this with rational trade setups, support resistance levels, momentum divergence. Have several timers. I presented a number of timing techniques. You need several timers, at least two, confirming a 2 or 3 day time window for a change in trend at a support resistance level. And if momentum divergence is also there, then you have an excellent trade setup. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. Planetary stepping differs from most other predictive techniques like cycles, Fibonacci projections, financial astrologies. Those techniques tell the market pretty much what it should be doing. You're expecting the market to reverse at this Fibonacci price or time projection. You're expecting the cycle to come due. Financial astrology has its lists of, well, if this planetary aspect is here, that's beneficial for prices, or prices will fall. There's some expectation of what will happen. Stepping techniques act on very short slices of data, and they don't have an opinion as to whether the market will go up or down. Changes in trend can be up to down, up to sideways, down to sideways. You can be in a sideways pattern, a triangle pattern, and have a breakout. Those are all changes of trend. So timing techniques on their own aren't going to tell you what to expect. You have to do something like look at the chart. Is the trend going up? Then it's either going to go down or sideways. So by combining this, you get some really excellent trade setups if you're mature in your understanding of how to use it. I must say this is probably the easiest technique you're ever going to apply. And because of that, compared to the potential return you can receive from using these techniques, they're simply unmatched for ease of effort. What I mean by that is, when you're inside, we're going to be doing in a few weeks, in November of 2013, we'll be doing some market geometry techniques that will be also timing techniques. And they're as good, maybe a little bit better than what you're going to see here, but they're complex. They're not easy to apply. There's a learning curve. What we're going to see here today, there's practically no learning curve. You're talking a few minutes of a learning curve, and you're picking really good quality pivots. So because of that, this is useful for practically everyone. Unlike some of the other techniques we've used, you have to use major highs or lows. They can't be minor pivots. If you don't know what a major high is, when we go through a few of these examples, but again, this is something you can ask on the forum, or just, this is actually, if you have trouble with this, maybe you shouldn't be trading. Maybe that's another way of saying it. The entry level of stepping techniques from return charts. It's just too common a thing for astrologers to use return charts. Sophisticated, complex stepping, and it won't be that complex when you see it, culminates with Timing Solutions Planetary Picture Time module. We'll be doing an example there. The mid-range is Planetary Equidistant Lines, Timing Solutions module. And you can get excellent swing trading timing. It's the easiest of all of them to apply. Let's get into the returns. The returns, you'll see this module. Let's find out where we are. First, we've already done planetary fans. I have a video called Planetary Angles for Gold, where we covered the use of this tool. That video is not just applicable. I'm using gold as an example in that video. It's applicable for any market that moves. You can also use the planetary fan angle technique intraday. If you know what you're doing, you can practically use any planet. You may bias the sun and moon a little more intraday, but for planetary fans, intraday, with a little practice, if you watch my Planetary Angles for Gold video, you'll be able to retrofit it for day trading without much effort. We're going to go to all planetary returns. Not this one, this one. Let's start with, this is not going to, the first example won't probably rock you too much, but this, I just want to give you a feel for how this happens. Let's start with moon, moon. Let's go to a high point. And let me just make it a little bit easier to see. I'll make this beginning point red so it's easy to see. And let's just increase that. I'll take a look at what we got. So this is a return chart. The idea here is that we can see at this high point, the moon was at 0 degrees 3 minutes of Sagittarius. So each line represents when the moon comes back to that exact same zodiac point, 0 degrees 3 minutes of Sagittarius. And what we can see is, oh, a little breakout here, here. Hey, here's a pivot. Here's a pivot. Not much here, not much here. So the moon by itself, not that dramatic. But if you use the mirroring technique, and in this video, I'm assuming you watched the Streaks and Mirrors video. I'm going to be presenting several techniques in this video, and I just don't have the time to review exactly what that technique is. Basically, what we'll be doing is I'm looking not to the right of this red line, which is future data, in theory. I'll be looking at the left, and I'm going to move this till I get to a place where I can see mirroring happening. And that's pretty good, because in historical time right now, I'm picking this pivot. I'm close to a breakout here, but I'm picking this pivot very nicely. I'm picking this pivot area very nicely. Picking a change in trend here. Not much here. Picking small change in trend here. So mirroring is telling me that, hey, this particular position of the moon, 25 degrees, 39 minutes, Cancer. So let's move the chart off to the right and see what we're picking. We're picking a pivot, picking a breakout, picking a pivot, picking, well, doesn't look that good, but something happened. We accelerated trend. Okay, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had about 10 trading days sideways, breakout, strong pivot. Again, this is the moon. The moon by itself is not going to knock your socks off, and here, whatever that is, picking a low point here. So by this point in time, you wouldn't expect this moon cycle to keep working. It's really only, you really only want to go out with the moon 4 or 5 of these bars. And then you would redraw it to some other, you would use the mirroring technique again, starting with some pivot like here or here or here, and you would use the mirroring technique. So mirroring with the moon return, powerful. Mirroring, moon return traditional way, just plop it on a high, not that powerful. Let's move on to the next example. I'm going to change it from moon, moon to Mercury, Mercury, and we'll see what happens. And we'll start with, Mercury, all the other planets you can use geocentric. Mercury, no. Because it goes retrograde so often, it won't give you good results. You have to start with helio or phase. We'll do both helio and phase so you can see the difference. So let's take Mercury, drag it to this high point, and lo and behold, we're picking the next high. Now, when you start using the planets, you don't expect this to work for a year going out. You expect it to work for a couple of iterations max. After you successfully pick this one, you would do another Mercury return using that as a pivot. And then you would, as time passed, you would use that. And as time passed, you would use that. And as time passed, you would use that. But here, we're pretending, oh, maybe this is current time. This is now identified. We had an upswing. This is now identified as a pivot. You do your Mercury return, and you have a very nice pick for the next change in trend. As you can see, it doesn't really play out. You know, when you deal with the planets, the return charts, you expect it to go out one. If you want to try mirroring, you can do that, but we're going to have better opportunities for the mirroring technique. For swing traders, use the moon for mirroring, or use planetary equidistant lines, which we'll be doing in a few minutes. Let's change it to helio. I'm sorry, let's change it to the phase zodiac. I understand for most people you don't know what that is, no problem. I don't have time to explain that here. Maybe Timing Solutions knowledge base or somebody can volunteer to explain phase zodiac, but I don't want to take people's time right now. So now with the phase zodiac, I get a slightly different look. It's a little bit more of an esoteric approach using the phase zodiac. You know, you could say, well, that I don't see anything here, but maybe there is something here. There's an see what that looked like? Does that look similar? Does that look similar? Yeah, it does. It does look similar. It's not the type of... So this is a little bit more esoteric. I leave the phase zodiac and the planets for your exploration. You don't need it for timing. It's interesting, but not essential. You can try, for example, like right here, if I change it to this state using the mirroring technique, I see I'm picking this pivot and that pivot in the past. What's the value of picking it in the past? Well, maybe it'll work in the future. So now I'm a little closer to picking a pivot here, but look what happened here. So let's review this. By using the mirroring technique, I see that in the past, I caught two pivots. That's historical data. But the reason we do that, the reason I optimized it like this, is so that in the future, okay, that's maybe not that easy to trade this one, but that one is. So you can do this with Venus. You can do this with Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. I wouldn't really go out any further. Mars, you know, for a Mars return, you're dealing like 2 years. Okay, so that Mars really isn't that practical. But Moon, Mercury, Venus, you can do interesting things with them. You can also, if you want, for example, you can combine Mercury with Venus and see what happens. And you know, actually, I'm looking at the time. I'm at 14 minutes already. So why don't we skip that one? Because you can, now that you know the technique, it's too easy to practice on your own. Let's go on to the next one. I'm going to do the more complex one called Planetary Picture Time. But this is quite complex to do. So what I did was I'm just going to give you one of the formulas that seems to work rather consistently on any market that moves. If you can spend months researching with this one, so we're just going to do this. See, there's an interesting relationship, that the Fibonacci relationship that Venus and Uranus has. Venus by itself, its synodic cycle is 61.8% of an Earth year. The synodic cycle of Venus-Uranus together is 226 days. 365 an Earth year times 0.618 equals 225. But you see, the Earth actually, it's 365 point something. So it's, when you multiply the point something by 6.8, you pretty much get 226. It's between 225, 226. So the synodic cycle of Venus-Uranus as compared to the Earth's synodic cycle around the Sun is a Fibonacci ratio. Venus has its own, so it's an interesting, Venus-Uranus is interesting from Fibonacci perspective. Mars is an energetic trigger planet. Keyword here is trigger. The second keyword is energy, but this is the primary. So the planetary picture time formula is Venus plus Uranus minus Mars. So let's do it. You go to Advanced in Timing Solution, Planetary Picture Time, drag it into the main window here. Now you can select fixed step or variable step. If we're using variable step, which means that it'll ignore this, it'll ignore that. It'll just ignore it because you're doing variable. Here's the formula: Venus plus Uranus minus Mars. Make sure that you have your arrow selected here. So click, click. And now we can just do a very simple connect this to that. That's for starters. And when we do that, I think I screwed it up when I took my, let me do it again. Right there. So all I did was I started at this high and I went to the next pivot. And lo and behold, I'm picking the next pivot, and I'm picking the next pivot. And 2 days off from the next pivot, I'm picking that. And then, you know, again, when you use stepping techniques, as you saw in my streaks and mirrors video, it works for about 4 or 5 lunations. It doesn't work for a year, doesn't work for half a year. It'll work for a few months. And then you have to start using other pivots. So this doesn't matter. But if this doesn't put a smile on your face, my God, that was easy to do. I can add this to my repertoire. Well, what will please you? At any rate, you can start connecting on your own other pivots. This is a very easy technique to practice with once you know a formula that works well. You can also try applying mirroring techniques where, let's say, I start here, but instead of connecting this to a pivot, I'm looking to see where over here am I getting some interesting combinations on the left side of the chart, the historical. And like right off the bat, I'm noticing something right here. I'm picking this pivot right here. I'm picking this pivot right here. I'm getting a change of trend from up to sideways here. I'm getting a breakout here. So this looks fairly interesting. And when I look to my right, catching a breakout, catching a breakout, catching a low. That's pretty much a change in trend. You may say, I'm not sure that is, but actually I am sure, because if I can draw a rather steep upsloping trend line to when this red line is here, well, that's a change in trend. Very clear upsloping trend line. This is pretty clear. So what I did was, again, if you're not familiar with, I know you're getting tired of hearing this, but if you're not familiar with mirroring, you have to understand that it's possible to become familiar with mirroring. It's not a rocket science type concept. All I did was look to the left. I made sure that I'm connecting several pivots here. I'm ignoring everything to the right of the first red bar. And when I do connect interesting looking phenomena on the historical side, lo and behold, I'm starting to catch interesting things on the right side of that bar. This is called mirroring. So again, that's the end of our second technique. Again, I would recommend you practice this one. So now we have returns and planetary picture time. Now we're going to go to an even easier technique to apply and a more powerful technique. But let's take a look. See, I like giving credit where credit is due, and the person to go to for this technique is actually Bradley Cohen. And I believe, you can see over here, this is his website URL. Let me bring this into the window here so you can see it. Bradley Cohen, it must be a fascinating person to speak to. This article appeared spring 2003 issue of Trader's World, plus he has it reprinted on his website. This is a free public domain article, so I'm not violating anything. I mean, he has it available for free on his website. I would recommend taking a look at this, because I don't want to simply repeat all of his information here. It's about a 7-8 minute read. Charts, information, and at the very end he has a little a device for day traders using this technique that you can do in Timing Solution. You can do all of this stuff in Timing Solution. One thing that I want to point out, because I know in the Timing Solution forum we have people who've been using astrology for decades. And this approach is a little different. Where this technique differs from classical astrology is that I do not care what the angles between the planets are at tops or bottoms. When he identifies an angle at a top or bottom, let's say at a top, Mars and Venus are 80 degrees apart. Well, then he'll start applying 30-degree increments then. So he'll next look at Mars and Venus when they're 110 degrees apart, 80 plus 30, 110, then 140, then 170. So he gives several examples of that here, and we'll go through. His examples are more for longer term trends. As you can see, he's incrementing by 4 years here, 5 years. So not good for swing trading. Here he's getting down to a slightly more, and actually he's using Mars-Uranus here, which is very nice. Bradley Cohen uses heliocentric almost exclusively. Not a bad idea. My experience has been Robert Hand Sr., Robert Hand Jr., so many others. Bradley Cohen used helio. I've used throughout my trading career helio predominantly. So again, if you're familiar, if you're a classical astrologer, that goes against your grain. You've been taught to use geocentric. You've been taught to apply specific planetary aspects, and you've been taught that certain planetary aspects cause the market to go up, others cause the market to go down. You might want to just be a little bit more objective. So there's 3 techniques. There's Bradley Cohen's technique, which is listed as number 2 here. The first one is exactly what we did with the prior technique, the planetary picture time, where you just connect the high and low pivots. But the first one, ideally, should be a major high. If you're day trading, not so much. Intermediate works just fine. The next pivot doesn't have to be a major low. So major high connected to the next low pivot, or a major low connected to the next high pivot. And the third technique will be mirroring. So let's just start. Planetary equidistant lines. I know you can't see it. If timing solution, you find something, if one of these dialog windows can be transparent, then my recording software doesn't pick it up. So I'm going to do Venus, Mars, Helio. And I'm going to start right at that high, and I'm just going to connect this. And we'll see what happens. So now it becomes interesting, because now we have several techniques that you've been presented that are picking this and this as turning points. This here, this here. This one's off a little. So the idea here is that when you have multiple non-correlated timers predicting the same change in trend, your confidence level or your trade setup is confirmed. If you're a pure discretionary trader, confidence level. If you like to use trade setups, and you should use trade setups, then your trade setups are becoming confirmed. Let's make it a little bit easier to see. So my base I'll make red. The others will keep blue. That base didn't work very well, did it? Let's try this red. Nope, it ain't going to do it. It's going to keep it blue. But anyway, it has a red dot there. That's the one we're surprised it didn't work there. But anyway, you can also connect highs to highs. And you can do some pretty interesting things just by connecting highs to lows, because markets have symmetry. This again may not look like much to you, but if I can draw a horizontal line under something and then a breakout occurs right on the timer, see, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't blame you if you don't know what I'm talking about. Where's my horizontal line? See, from this point here, I have a support level, and the support level gets broken. So to your eye, this timer may not, oh, that didn't work. No, it worked. It's just not your style of trading. And there it is. You usually go out about 4. So 1, 2, caught that low real nice and down to sideways. But anyway, you only want to go out a little while. So that would be the first technique. And that you start with a major high and start going out to pivots. And you can go high to high if you want. Let me get rid of the crosshairs. You can do all sorts of fancy stuff because this stuff, market symmetry is an amazing thing. It just keeps on working fairly nicely. Not so much here, but the ones we saw just before. So that would be the first technique. Let's go do the next technique. We're going to use Bradley Cohen's method. We're going to simply start by using Venus, Mars, Helio. Again, on your own, you can certainly feel free to experiment to your heart's content with geo or phase. I'm just showing you the core technique, and you'd be hard-pressed not to notice a value here, so I'm sure you'll be interested in doing some experimentation on your own. But for now, what we'll do, and I know you can't see this, so I have a little bit of a problem here, don't I? What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this parameter right here, step, to 30. And it'll ignore what I connected. It'll start with that major high I selected and go out 30 degrees. So what you do is you swipe this, key in 30, then you hit the red arrow, and it'll start giving you a series. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm keying in 30, hitting my red arrow, and you see how it changed. So, what did it do? So remember, all we did was select this. This is the first 30-degree separation of Venus, Mars, Helio. That's your second, that's your third, that's your fourth. There's the break. See, that breakout is being caught over and over by multiple softwares. The breakout here being not this, the breakout from the horizontal trading range we've been in. You can draw a rectangle around this. You have this nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 month, no, close to, 5.5 month trading range. And you get the breakout right there. And we've had multiple timers picking this breakout, so that's yummy. Very similar here. You get about a 10, 11 trading day sideways range and another breakout, and there's your pivot. So, Bradley Cohen's technique is doing okay. Wrong direction. So it's picking, so you can see it's still working over here. So this is doing, way to go, Bradley. I'm sorry, he refers to himself as Mr. Cohen, not Bradley. I don't understand this. He writes this stuff on his own. I mean, this is a one-man operation, and he refers to himself as Mr. Cohen. So that's cool. I mean, it's fine. Anyway. What we're going to do next is take a look at mirroring. So we've covered 2 of the tree techniques. You're probably wondering why maybe I should use some other planets. I want to tell you something. When I first designed how I'm going to present this, I had, these are the simple techniques and these are the complex techniques. And I said to myself, why the hell should I present the complex? To do the complex techniques, you would spend a lot of time figuring out which planets to use. You'd have to use the first trade chart, a natal chart, or an all-time. You would find the date of the all-time high of your tradable. And then you would determine which planets are the most important planets, or what planet rules this commodity, what planet rules this currency, what planet rules that currency. In a current Forex currency pair, you'd use those 2. And it really wouldn't be a big improvement over this. So my rule of thumb is, when in doubt, use Venus, Mars, Helio. Someone could say, yeah, but I got this fantastic course written by this world-famous trader, and it only costs a few $1,000s, and if you buy it, you'll be enlightened in 1 week or something. I don't know what the hell the current advertising says. I've been out of this for a few years, but whatever they say, just say, no, I'm going to use Venus, Mars, Helio. They say, but you don't know what you're missing. No, use Venus, Mars, Helio. But if you try these planets, or if you try this Fibonacci, no, just use Venus, Mars, Helio and see where it goes. If you're a swing trader, just use Venus, Mars, Helio. If you want to do longer term trading, do what Bradley Cohen does. He's a very intelligent man. Use Mars, Uranus, Helio. Mars, Uranus for longer term swing trading, Venus, Mars. Simplify your life, be happy. So anyway, next technique would be mirroring. So we use this high over here. So we still have our start point here at this high, and now we're going to manipulate this guy right here, and we're looking at the left of our chart, and we're trying to identify places where, okay, so pivot here, up to sideways here, pivot here, up, sideways, breakout. So the mirroring technique looks respectable here, and what I noticed by doing that is it seems to be doing not that bad. Again, we're getting another thing. This one's a little opaque than this breakout. It's a day late, 1 day late, so I'll let it live. 1 day late's acceptable, because you're going to be creating time windows with these. And we'll be talking about how to use this thing. In next week's videos, we're going to have a video where we integrate the various timing tools, support resistance levels, and I'm going to suggest how to use all these videos, techniques together to create a trade setup. But we're not going to do that in this video. So basically, you'll be creating a time window. So that's within the time window. We're catching that pivot. This is nice, nice big drop. We go from down to sideways. That's a change in trend, like it or not. We're catching, that's awesome. So this bracketed an entire, that's just incredible. It bracketed an entire trading range. Down to sideways, sideways to up. So that's awesome. And at this point in time, you would expect it to stop working. These things only work for maximum 6 iterations, you know, so we're there. Yeah, we're there. That's about where I would expect it to stop working. And then you'd have to redraw it. So where does that bring us? Well, it brings us to the end. And these techniques that you've been presented, what I would recommend is you watched it once at some point in time, watch it a second time and take notes. Write down the planetary picture time. Take down some notes for planetary returns. We have 3 techniques. And in the third technique, planetary equidistant lines, there's 3 methods of using them. Which one do you use? You use all of them. You use all of them. And you'll use the ones from the prior videos. And you create your own calendar of timed change in trends. And when you have multiple non-correlated change in trend predictions, you probably know what to do. So with that, good luck.